This Friday marks 5 years since Juneteenth became recognized as a federal holiday, the day when all enslaved people were finally free. Celebrations are planned all around the country and here in New Jersey. And while we also plan to celebrate America's 250th birthday this July 4th, for many Americans, Juneteenth is the true celebration of liberty and freedom for all. For more on the meaning of this holiday, how it's being recognized here in New Jersey, and the continued calls for reparations, I'm joined by Jean-Pierre Brutus, Senior Counsel for the Economic Justice Program at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Jean-Pierre, it's so great to have you with us. Can you just explain for us the history and the significance of Juneteenth, which we know, of course, is a reference to June 19th, 1865?
Yes, sure. So for your viewers, June 19th, 1865 is important. Is that because when Union soldiers came to Galveston, Texas, and announced through different documents that slavery had ended throughout the United States after the end of the Civil War, enslaved people in Texas began to celebrate. And this is part of the series of celebrations throughout the South and throughout the United States as a series of jubilees celebrating the end of slavery in the United States. And June 19th, 1865 was when the news came to enslaved people in Texas. And this holiday, Juneteenth, the combination of June and the 19th, was celebrated throughout the United States, throughout the South, and became a federal holiday recently. And this date is
So
important.
you
I think,
you Well, you raise an important point because you say that's when the news came to enslaved people in Texas, because we know the Emancipation Proclamation took effect on January 1st of 1863. So why did it take so long, years, for that news to reach these folks in Texas?
so although Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in January in 1863, they had no the Emancipation Proclamation did not have an enforcement mechanism. It was for enslaved people in the South, which the Union had no control or power over. It was only through the Civil War and through the fighting that happened and through the war in which the Union won that then the Emancipation Proclamation was able to be enforced. And one of the things I want to point out for your viewers is that enslaved people prior to not only the issue of the Emancipation Proclamation, but also to June 19th, 1865, they left the plantations that they were on in the South. They joined the Union Army. They joined as soldiers, as cooks, as spies, and they were agents in their own independence, in their own freedom. And they put the abolition of freedom on Lincoln's agenda. It was enslaved people who had their own vision of freedom and who were agents of history and who made their freedom a reality.
Yeah, it's a point that's so often overlooked when we consider the Civil War and who actually was involved in the fighting. Advocates today have continued to call for reparations for the descendants of enslaved people. Can you just help us to understand what they're calling for when they call for reparations?
Sure. And one item I also want to point out with Juneteenth is that sort of gap between the announcement of the Emancipation Proclamation and the news getting to folks in Galveston, Texas in 1865. And that delay between the explanation and announcement of freedom and actual freedom is very much a kind of symbol or metaphor for Black freedom here in the United States. That delay between the law stating that Black people are free and actual realized freedom. And what is needed to realize that actual freedom, for Black people to flourish, to Black people to be free, is reparations. And it's only through reparations as a process, comprehensive reparations, can we see Black people flourish, Black people thrive here in New Jersey and throughout the United States. And what we mean by repair is repairing all the harms of slavery, the harms of Jim Crow and segregation, and the ongoing harms that continue to persist that reproduce the inequalities that came before, the generational inequalities, including one of the largest racial wealth gaps in the country right here in New Jersey. That's over $600,000 between white households and Black households in New Jersey. But also all the other forms of racial inequities that manifest in incarceration rates, maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates, exposure to environmental toxins, and the list goes on. And what reparations is meant to do is to repair those harms, to create a new New Jersey. We are living in a world made by slavery, And we want to live in a world made by reparations, a New Jersey made by reparations.
Some of the things that you listed, we might call, fall under the umbrella of environmental justice or Black maternal health or, the end of redlining as a practice when it comes to loaning mortgages, for example. Um, these are all issues that have been taken up in one form or another here in New Jersey, nationally as well. But folks have also called for a specific dollar amount to be paid or investments to be made into communities that have been most impacted, Black communities most impacted by slavery and by social justice practices, lack of social justice practices. I want to ask, do you believe that there is, beyond the legislation that you're calling for, that there is a payout, something that the federal government should pay to descendants of enslaved people?
So in our report, for such a time as this, the Nowness of Reparations for Black people in New Jersey, we have close to 100 recommendations, including structural transformation. And as part of that, we do call for payment for the harms of slavery in New Jersey. We call for payments for the period of Jim Crow and segregation in New Jersey. We also call for payments for ongoing harms that have persisted after the ending of formal segregation in Jim Crow in New Jersey. And then we also call for payments for closing the racial wealth gap in New Jersey. As I stated before, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, in the nation. And so those payments are designed to be part of a comprehensive package for all Black people in New Jersey to address the harms of slavery. We call for
Yeah.
comprehensive reparations, including payments.
Just quickly, you have a Juneteenth celebration happening this week. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So one of the things that's important about this work around repair and reparations is to increase the public awareness and knowledge of the need for repair in New Jersey. We can draw a straight line between the harms that you've mentioned and I've identified between maternal mortality and infant mortality back to slavery in New Jersey. New Jersey has been called the slave state of the North. And what we found is that 56% of people in New Jersey simply don't even know that slavery happened. And so for our Juneteenth symposium, yes, we'll be celebrating freedom, but we'll have a panel discussion talking about the work of the New Jersey Reparations Council, as well as the work going forward that we're doing here in New Jersey around repair. We'll also have a keynote from Professor Dorothy Brown about her recent book on reparations, Getting to Reparations. And we'll have interactive workshops in the afternoon for attendees to engage and to think and to imagine about what a new New Jersey would look like. And we'll also have breakfast and lunch and even dessert for our attendees. And to close out the day, we'll have a performance from Newark Mayor Roz Baraka as well.
All right, there you go. And that will be on Juneteenth, which is this June 19th, Friday. Jean-Pierre Brutus, Senior Counsel of Economic Justice Program at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Thank you so much for your perspective today.
Thank you so much for having me on behalf of the Institute. I appreciate it.